Could you please take your seats? Right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming along on what is actually turning out to be quite a warm evening. So we'll try and keep things reasonably smart tonight if we can, but make sure that you get plenty of cold water. That's my advice. So let's start off then, please, with apologies for absence. Jason? Sorry, Sarah.
It's me today. Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies today from Councillor Gretrix, Councillor Hobson and Councillor Maelstrom.
Thank you. We don't have any public participation tonight, I believe. So we're then on to item 3, which is approved of the minutes of the previous meeting. That's the 28th of March. So could I see a proposer, please, for those? Proposer? Thank you. Councillor Martin Burfoot and a seconder, Councillor Dobbs. Could I see all those in favour of those minutes, please show? I think that's unanimous. Unanimous, thank you very much. Do members have any interests which they believe they should declare? Don't think so. Thank you. Leaders' announcements. Councillor Flitter, did you want to say anything?
Not this evening, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And then on to Civic Chair's announcements. David.
Oh, sorry. Got the wrong. All right, thank you.
Turn that one on. Oh.
Yeah.
Just a slight technical hitch here.
Right, is that ready? Oh. Hi, sorry about that, everybody. I don't intend to say much tonight. You don't want to hear a list of my culinary delights over the last month. There's two things I will mention, which were sort of a bit special. Well, one was, I'd just like to thank everybody who came to my civic service. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did, and it turned into what's probably a cheese fest, because we had 6 different types of local cheeses for the bun fight afterwards. So thanks for that. That was a lovely evening. I did appreciate it, and I want to thank Sarah in particular, along with Freya, who left Derbyshire Dales the following day, for the organisation, which went off absolutely incredibly well. So thank you. The other was I was honoured to be part of the opening ceremony for Tissington Wells dressings, which are absolutely fantastic, and I would fully recommend anybody who hasn't seen them to go and have a look at them, because I mean the whole village is a festival at this time of year, and there's some super wells, so try and get to see those. I'll save the full resume for next week to give you all something to look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're now on to receiving the minutes from various committees. Those are listed for you there. There's the Planning Committee of the 10th of March, Local Plan of the 8th of April, Planning of the 14th of April, Governance and Resources 23rd of April, Local Plan Committee of the 19th of April, and Planning Committee of the 12th of May and the Local Plan Committee of the 13th of May have been circulated now as well. Can I have a proposer, please, to move those en bloc?
Chair, I'll move them en bloc.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. And a seconder, Councillor Dobbs again. Can I see a show of hands in favour of accepting all those minutes? Thank you. Okay. And any against? And any abstentions? Just the one. Thank you. On to questions then. So these are members' questions. Councillor Lees, I think this is over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. A question for the Leader of the Council. Why has not a compulsory purchase order been made on the Holmesford Woodyard site, as this is the only site which has planning permission granted for a traveller site?
Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you, Stuart. The report considered by the Community and Environment Committee at its meeting on the 14th of May 2026 provided a detailed chronology of the history of the Holmesford Wood site and the reasons why the Community and Environment Committee on the 21st of November resolved to discontinue this council's interest in that site. The council's position has not changed since. A site with the benefit of planning permission, if the owners wish to bring that site forward as a traveller site, they are free to do so without the intervention of financial support from this council.
Would you like to come back at all?
Thank you, Chair. I just going back to the what came up about the compulsory purchase order on the land at Watery Lane, and myself personally, I just think this would be the practical solution and the cheapest option. Even though we was talking of sort of 1.3 million, the Watery Lane site, contaminated site, lot of issues, lot of financial costs, and I just thought this was the ideal option. So thank you, Chair, for that one, and Leader.
If I can just come back, Chair, I think one thing that we have to remember is that we've been instructed by the owners not to approach them again. After all the discussions that we tried to have, they firmly came back and didn't want to deal with us. So unless the situation changes, I'm afraid that's still going to be our stance.
Okay. There's some other questions now which Councillor Hobson has put forward, but I understand, Councillor Lees, you're going to ask those.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Take them one at a time, I think, the easiest way, is that, if that's okay. Following the heartfelt and strongly expressed public participation at the Community and Environment Committee meeting on the 14th of May 2026, will the Council now take steps to remove Middleton, Matlock Bath and all Derbyshire Dales car parks from the list of possible proposed temporary traveller sites?
Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, thank you. As members have previously been advised, no further work has been undertaken in respect of progressing the provision of temporary traveller sites in either Middleton or Matlock Bath, and certainly no Derbyshire Dales car parks have been considered for possible temporary traveller sites since the council meeting in December 2024. Therefore, no list exists at the present time. I'm a bit confused about what list has been referred to.
Councillor Lees.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Question 2. Given that Derbyshire County Council Leader, Councillor Alan Graves, has stated in writing to me, that's Councillor Hobson, that the Council intends to retain the DCC-owned Watery Lane site and has set out clear strategic reasons for doing so, including future waste provision, the Ashburn bypass and depot rationalisation. Why was none of this specific information provided to members of the Community and Environment Committee on the 14th of May 2026?
Thank you again, Stuart, for passing that question on. Contrary to whatever information Councillor Hobson has received, Derbyshire County Council have not set out their clear strategic reasons for refusing to engage with this council on the provision of Watery Lane site for travellers. In response to the letter from the Chief Exec dated the 14th of October 2025, Councillor Reid responded that the land at Watery Lane is not a site that the DCC is in a position to offer up for this purpose, as we require it to meet our own strategic plans. However, there was no explanation or context of what those strategic plans were actually comprised of, and no mention was made to anything else to do with future waste or Ashbourne bypass or depot rationalisation. Therefore, members cannot therefore be appraised of any information that this authority has not been received.
Thank you, Councillor Litter. And the third and final question from Councillor Hobson. Does the leader accept that the committee may have made an incorrect and potentially very costly decision to pursue a compulsory purchase order without being given this important information?
Thank you. There again, the answer is quite simple. No, I do not believe that that is the case. The identification of a permanent gypsy and traveller site is key to the corporate plan of this council, and the Progressive Alliance administration are determined to resolve this matter once and for all through consideration of all potential means. If that is necessary to do so via compulsory purchase, this is an option that this administration will consider.
Councillor Lees.
Nothing to come back on, Chair, as they're not my questions, so thank you to the leader for that. Thank you.
Okay, good. Councillor Bates, I think you've got a question.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Flitter, as the council still have not got a response from Nestlé, what further efforts are being made to obtain a response?
Thank you, Councillor Bates. On 5th of January 2026, the council wrote to the appointed land agents for Nestlé UK, seeking Nestlé's support in removing or varying restrictive covenant on the land at Mayfield Road in Ashbourne. Due to the lack of response, further contact was made on the 27th of January and the 30th of January. An acknowledgement of our request was received on the 30th directly from the senior legal counsel at Nestlé on the 2nd of February, advising that their team would be in contact in due course. The matter therefore rests entirely with Nestlé and we await their response.
Okay.
Yeah, can I come back on that? Well, that's nearly, you're coming up for nearly 4 months. Surely it needs chasing again.
Thank you, Chair. In answer to that, I'm in possession of a letter tonight sent by our Chief Exec aimed at Councillor Graves, and hopefully we shall follow something up with Nestlé, but at this moment in time we're waiting for their response.
Thank you, Councillor Flitter. The second question, will the council publish any emails or letters from DCC in relation to the proposed compulsory purchase order for Watery Lane, Ashbourne?
Certainly, following the decision of the Community and Environment Committee on the 14th of May, a further approach is to be made to the County Council, that's this letter, to acquire through compulsory purchase, if necessary, or lease the land allocated in the adopted Derbyshire Dales local plan at Watery Lane. Once a response is received, members will be informed in the usual means.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, councillors. We now move then to item 9 on the agenda, which is the animal welfare policy. You'll find that on pages 61 of your documents. Okay. David, I think you're going to deal with this one, aren't you?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. On Tuesday the 19th of May, the Licensing and Appeals Committee reviewed the new animal welfare policy following the public consultation from the 16th of September to the 31st of December 2025. Members of the committee unanimously agreed that the Council be recommended to approve the revised policy set out in Appendix 1 without further public consultation, and that Council be recommended to have the Animal Welfare Officer delegation set out in Appendix 3 to Part 4 of the Constitution. Just a little bit of background information. The Environmental Health Service received some very constructive and valuable feedback during the consultation process, and this has been considered along with the service interactions of individual businesses within the area. During the licensing meeting on the 19th, further legal advice was provided on Appendix 3 and has changed from the original proposals. The policy's operational guidance on the process and operational matters for the service and provides the public with guidance on animal welfare matters for the Derbyshire Dales area. DEFRA produces updated technical guidance periodically, and this policy is to support the decision-making process within the service. Appendix 1 is the new proposed policy, with changes post-consultation highlighted in green. Appendix 2 is the Qualities Impact Assessment statement. Appendix 3 has been updated slightly as confirmed, and Appendix 4 provides details of the consultation responses. The Council has received feedback from Nature Watch and Four Paws UK, and have also reviewed positive feedback from 2 district licensed breeders verbally and in writing. We would like to thank everyone for providing feedback during the consultation. In order to implement the policy and changes to the Constitution, full Council approval is required. Therefore, the policy and proposed Council Constitution require consideration tonight. The Constitution changes and policy are 2 separate documents. The Constitution changes allow for the service to serve fixed penalty notices for breaches of animal welfare legislation. The policy will introduce requirements for dog breeding activities to require a vet inspection of the premises and upon a renewal, and a register for female dogs placed on the licence, and a yearly declaration of the breeding activities. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Do we have any questions from members on this? It doesn't look like it. No. Okay. Can I have a proposer, please, then, for this? Councillor Linthwaite.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is to be entirely commended. It brings us up to date with the latest DEFRA recommendations. The feedback we got in the consultation was entirely sensible and helpful. I was particularly pleased to see that individual dogs would be named and their chip numbers on the actual licences that are issued. So I think that also helps us strengthen our oversight of this business. So, yeah, I think it's all pretty straightforward, and I would commend it to the councillors.
Okay. Do I see a seconder? Councillor Chapman.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair. I'm particularly pleased to see the emphasis being strengthened on breeding activities, because from experience, my daughter's a vet, and a huge amount of neglected and unhealthy animals are brought through her, which has been just by keeping dogs and breeding them to death, basically. And it's certainly started during COVID, and it still continues. So it's the fact that we're strengthening that legislation over it is I'm fully in approval of. Thank you.
Do any other members wish to enter into debate? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I probably should have asked this in questions, so apologies. It just dawned on me there's a live incident, I think, in South Derbyshire at the moment in relation to dog and animal protection. It's probably too soon to know what has gone on there, but I guess the question is, when it's time, can we bring any, or can we check and see what learnings may be relevant from that adjacent authority that we may want to choose to apply here?
I'm sure there will come an appropriate time for that, but my understanding is it's not yet. Yeah. David. Anybody else? No, in which case I think we're ready to go to the vote on this. Could I see all those in favour, please, raise their hands? pretty unanimous to me. Thank you very much, members. On to our next item on the agenda, which is the housing paper. That's item 10 on page 127. Simon, would you like to kick off on this, please?
Thank you, Chair. When Council approved the Housing Strategy and Delivery Plan last May, we set out to deliver a step change. Hopefully this report sets out that's what we've done. We now have a clear evidence-based understanding of need across the district. The Housing Register, needs assessments and surveys all point to the same picture, around 800 households in need with demand far outstripping supply. Our partnerships have strengthened dramatically. We now meet regularly with the Peak National Park Planning Authority, our planning team, with registered providers, developers, landowners and Homes England. Because of that collaboration, our affordable housing pipeline has grown from 600 homes a year ago to more than 1,000 potential units across 62 schemes, and 20% of those already have planning permission. We've also grown our own stock from 43 to 62 homes, with more on the way. We've secured another round of local authority housing fund investment, our fourth successful bid, which will deliver 6 more homes for vulnerable households. A key part of the strategy was increasing capacity, and that's paying off. We now have strong working relationships with major house builders and registered providers, giving us the delivery strength needed both inside and outside the National Park. And with more providers active in the Derbyshire Dales, the Council can play a bigger enabling role. By using £1.8 million of capital reserves, we can unlock 129 affordable homes in National Park villages, places where costs are higher, viability is tougher and delivery is more complex. So members, the message is clear. Our strategy and delivery plan are driving real momentum. We've strengthened our evidence base, deepened partnerships, expanded the pipeline and boosted capacity. We are targeting affordable homes where they are most needed. The recommendations before you tonight gives a real opportunity to maximise delivery, both directly and through enabling partners, whilst recognising the backdrop of local government reorganisation and financial position. Before I pass over to questions, again, just to introduce 2 members of the team with me tonight. I've got Jeremy Mason, Housing Enabling and Development Manager, and our consultant, Gary Turner, who are here to support me in any questions, but happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. It's a very detailed paper, Simon. Thank you for the team for their work putting that together. I know it's been a long process, and the Housing Working Group has also been instrumental in that, so my thanks to all those members who have been involved. Do we have questions, please? Councillor Burford.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite a simple question, I hope. I wonder if Simon or somebody else can alert me as to where the site is for 3 houses in Baslow, because I suspect I was probably party to one of the previous promotions of an affordable housing scheme or social housing scheme in Baslow back probably about 15 years ago. And that was a very successful scheme, but it was open to quite a few objections from residents at the time, and I think probably the parish council as well. It has been quite a successful scheme as far as I know on Over Lane, which you're probably familiar with. But where is this present site?
Through you, Chair. Gary, do you want to answer that question?
I'm trying to locate the street name. In terms of its location, if you go by the Cavendish Arms, and there's the village square that opens out. It's the land opposite. It sits beneath existing affordable housing. It's an open green area, and the status of the site, it has a resolution to grant planning permission for 3 dwellings subject to a Section 106 agreement. The landowner has agreed a minimum figure to deliver the scheme. We've put a lot of work in with a number of developers to arrive at a construction figure which on any level is considered viable, and the landowner is effectively waiting for us to confirm an offer, hopefully following this meeting, which will allow him to complete the 106 agreement, release the planning permission, and hopefully allow us to progress the scheme. Well, it's not very good in locating it.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. So it is a fantastic report and a fantastic piece of work over the past year or so. So brilliantly done for that. One question. Your recommendation 7 is about consultancy support for the delivery of housing strategy. and delivery plan where they can't be delivered by a registered provider. So that seems like a really good recommendation. Do you know how long that's likely to come to fruition, and give us the advice that we'll be needing to make progress on those?
Through you, Chair. I might sort of defer to Karen, who's the expert on this particular piece of work in terms of how long that would take. My understanding, again, from conversations I've had with finance team, is that it wouldn't be necessarily a long piece of work to bring that forward. £10,000 isn't a lot of money in relation to consultancy work. I guess it's at the point that we do that, it's what we do it with, and we'd like to do it with live schemes, and they may not be aware. We may not be aware of those till much further down the route in terms of when we would need to engage that particular consultant to do that work.
If we wait until there's a live scheme, it then takes a lot longer to get through the process. Don't we want to start that now with one of our current schemes or a notional scheme?
Ideally, I think we can take it now, but it would be, a lot of that work would be guesstimate in terms of what those potential costs may be. If we are much closer to a particular project where we have taken that and exhausted that to a point where there is no registered provider at that point, and we want to gain that information to understand whether it's then viable for the authority to do more work, then we will be much closer to knowing the more information around the costs of that to bring that forward.
Thank you. Can I just ask members and staff to perhaps get a little bit closer to the microphone if possible? I'm struggling to hear some of this. Thank you. Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks for the report again. Very good and thorough report. I've just got one question that I may have got it wrong, but I seem to remember going back some months or years now, when we talk about Afghan refugees, providing accommodation for units for Afghan refugees, didn't we put something in at one stage for all refugees? Did it not come up at some point?
Simon, is that one for you?
Through you, Chair. I can't remember anything about all refugees. I mean, the methods that have come forward in terms of what we've supported generally have come through the Local Authority Housing Fund. So Local Authority Housing Fund, the first round of that was for Ukraine refugees. So we provided 17 units of accommodation directly for Ukrainian refugees that came across under the Homes for Ukraine scheme. And then subsequent rounds of the Local Authority Housing Fund, the attachment of that by government in terms of us accessing that funding has given us certain percentages that we've had to work through in relation to the Afghan refugees that have come through the various projects when the armed forces left Afghanistan, and 38,000 Afghans need to be rehoused as part of that project, and that's the ones that we're supporting through this particular project.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tom.
Councillor O'Brien, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a follow-up to Councillor Butcher's question, really. I think it must be quite difficult to undertake this consultancy without a live scheme to base it on. Given that the Baslow scheme does not have a registered provider, I don't really understand why we aren't undertaking the consultancy assessment in relation to Baslow. Given that it may demonstrate that is a justifiable project to borrow against, rather than using nearly £500,000 worth of capital.
Okay, who's going to take that one? Karen.
There are several reasons why I wouldn't recommend borrowing for that scheme. First of all, there are rules that are set under the Prudential Code around which we can borrow. So the first one of those is about the need to borrow. And wherever we've got money in reserves, there's no technical need to borrow. But the core reason that I wouldn't recommend it is because of affordability. So it wouldn't make sense to borrow and have to pay interest charges when we've got money in reserves. We are, especially at the moment, given the pressure that we've got on the revenue account, members will be aware from the report on the medium-term financial strategy that I presented in March that we've got significant budget gaps in future. So additional borrowing costs would just add to that budget cost unless we can show that they're viable. The other issue is that if we were to borrow, it would probably be from the Public Works Loans Board, but they operate minimum loan cover, so the minimum amount of loan would be £500,000. Often, in practice, most local authorities ask for at least £1 million. And finally, there's the LGR issue. So first of all, some members have told me that they prefer to spend our reserves now on live projects rather than leave them for a project that might not come to fruition and our reserves be passed over to a new council. And the second issue is that, as it says in the report, MHCLG guidance issued in July last year advises that while we don't know the outcome of the local government reorganisation review, we shouldn't enter into any long-term commitments that could affect the sustainability of a future authority. So again, I would advise that we don't enter into that at this current stage. And I'd echo what Simon said, that it really wouldn't make sense to ask the consultant to look at a notional project, because we'd then just have to repeat the exercise again for a specific project. And yes, we could do that for Baslow, but again, it's a decision for members. But I would advise that the likely costs would mean there would be an impact on the revenue account.
Like I said, that's a full and helpful response, but to me it rather suggests that it's a waste of the consultant. It's a waste of time. From what you've said, we rather preempted the need for a consultancy.
It's an observation. Any other questions? Councillor Burton.
Chair, can I just ask on page 9, 3.16, I've obviously got nothing at all against a healthy rapport and relationship with builders, but could we have a little bit more information, perhaps what sort of number have been achieved by these particular builders? I'm perplexed by one, because we keep getting applications, and particularly in the case of this particular builder, it didn't in Darley-Dale contain anything for local need at all, which was very disappointing. And in fact, we did oppose the particular application, and then we lost it at appeal. But really, what I'm trying to say to you is, what sort of numbers are we talking about, please, with this list of builders?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I'll certainly kick this one off. At the moment, there are no numbers set against those builders. Those builders are the ones that we're engaging with to establish a working relationship with them as we identify sites coming forward. So they're on our lists, and there are ones that we can work with when we do identify land as an example. Then those are the builders that we potentially would introduce to registered providers for them to have somebody to work forward through and bring a site forward to fruition. So it's just building that capacity so that we can point registered providers to more people within the district that will actually build homes, because this time last year we didn't have that many builders, so there was very little opportunity for housing associations to engage with those to actually bring those sites forward. So there's no notional numbers against these at the moment, but as sites come forward, those numbers will be appointed to that site. The registered provider will be introduced to that site, and the registered provider will then engage with a developer to bring that site forward. Gary, don't you want to add anything to that?
I think there's it's just to differentiate between the types of developers stroke builders that we're engaged with. the developers named listed at 3.16, they are homes builders, and in reality what we are really monitoring is their activity bringing forward homes for sale and the planning gain that goes with it. So we're trying to track the planning gain and support them or encourage them in the delivery of the affordable housing on site. The developers at 3.17, they're all SME builders that are very much more focused on partnership housing, delivering 100% or a much higher proportion of affordable homes on site.
I utterly support that we need to encourage. The frustration for us as ward members is that unfortunately when it comes to the crunch it seems to end up, as we all know, as very high cost and completely out of reach for, you know, a lot of the local youngsters.
Okay, Councillor Buttle, you had your hand up. Oh, sorry, Councillor Nash.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to propose the motion, if that's okay. I did have a big, long speech, but Simon's excellent introduction and some of the good questions has meant I'm rewriting it as I sit here. So I'd really like to thank Simon, Nikki, Jez and Gary for all the work they've put in the last year. The housing group will tell you how much work they have actually put in, and it's been lots. It's a year ago since we passed the Housing Strategy and Delivery Plan. I'm really pleased to say in this last year we've made loads of progress. We know a lot more about our environment than we did a year ago. First of all, does the housing needs surveys. We have a much better understanding now of our ward and parish needs, and that's allowed us to prioritise where we put our effort and time over the last year. We've also established 2 working groups, one before last summer, but the Affordable Housing Development Partnership with the National Park, and that's transformed the relationship from where I'm sitting. There seems to be a lot more willingness to work together to deliver projects, and within the park you can see that. There's something like 150 new houses that we weren't even talking about a year ago. We've also brought Gary on, and I can see the skills transfer between Gary and members of the team that he's brought to bear, which is excellent. He's also got a great set of relationships across the industry, which has allowed us to build that relationship with a range of developers, and that has resulted in a lot of this pipeline being a deliverable product. So it's fantastic that we've got the extra pipeline, but we also needed more registered providers to take them on. And in the last 12 months, we've more than doubled the number of people that are considering working within the Derbyshire Dales. So fantastic, we now have understanding of demand, pipeline, developers lined up, and registered providers lined up to take them on. Still one element that we need to do, and this is where we come in tonight, we need to pass this paper and authorise the funding. 6 months ago, this paper might have looked very different because at that time we didn't have enough RPs to take on all these houses. And at the housing group, we were talking about potentially borrowing millions of pounds to make those projects happen. Now, the hard work that the team has put in has meant that RPs are available now. That means we don't have to borrow the money. And I'm glad that Councillor O'Brien and Karen have talked about Baslow, because that saves me having to do it. I think Baslow is really important, not just for the finance that we talked about, but it is a site we can deliver, and it is a site that has planning permission, so we can deliver it today, start on it almost today, as soon as we push the button. That will be the first houses we deliver as part of this programme. There are lots of other stuff going on as well, but I've got a couple more pages, so you'll be pleased to know I'm going to shut up and just jump to the last paragraph. Lastly, I'd like to say, although I'm proposing this on behalf of the working group, every party had someone in the group supporting and questioning the housing team. We work really well together, and the monthly meetings often go on for far longer than they're scheduled. I'm sure that that's not to the pleasing of Simon and his team, but for us, we do get the answers, and the team do work really hard with any suggestions or questions we have. So I'm really pleased to propose that this paper and its recommendations be accepted.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Buttle.
Thank you very much, Roger. Yeah, this has been an absolute joy. It really has. We've worked together really well. The team have been a joy. Gareth, Sue, Andy, and you, Roger, it's just been really supportive. We've really got our head round what's happening. We've understood the issues. We've been led through them by the officer team, and Gary's been superb at sort of bringing us out of ourselves and making us more outward looking and more reactive. We're just altogether better. It's been a revolution of process. A process revolution. Something like that. It's been good. Very much enjoyed it. Glad to second it. The Baslow one kind of feels a little bit expensive, but then we end up owning that. And if there were more than 3, they would be an exemplar. They're going to be the best cat houses built in the National Park. The National Park have been really, really positive. They've been really helpful. Got another couple of things here. Yeah, some of it's quite complicated. If anybody wants to find out more about planning gain or what have you, do feel free to catch me, and I will try and give my somewhat limited understanding and share my enthusiasm. So this, I do really hope everyone's going to fully support this, because it has been such a joy.
Well, there's an invitation to members. Do we have anybody else who wants to contribute to this discussion? Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to echo my colleagues here. I've had the opportunity to be working on this group, and I will thank all the officers and everybody that's been involved with it. And I do feel that, although, as we've just stated, it could be expensive for the Baslow, but I think this is opening a door for the communities around in the Peak Park, which what we was trying to achieve, of getting affordable houses for the locals. And we if I'm not mistaken, this opens another door. If we take these 3 on, it'll be ours, but it'll bring in the RPs and the developers to show that we're willing to put our money there, so that they could come and follow on. And then hopefully, as you see in one of the pipelines, there's another 126 units that will be open, and I think it's bringing the fact that we'll have at least 10 years of affordable housing put in a pipeline. And I think that's something that this council, once it folds from LGR, will be something of a legacy that we can leave. And I think that what we've worked for, I think is wonderful. So thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I too want to congratulate the officers and the housing team. I think there's much to support and applaud in this report. I particularly welcome the initiatives in Baslow, Carver and Parwich, and also down in Durbridge and Brailsford. It was quite interesting when I was down in Hullen Ward and Brailsford and Durbridge on the local plan work recently, what the commitment there is in our southern parishes to affordable housing. So it's not just an issue in the National Park. I do have to say, though, that residents in my ward, in Eames, Stoney, Middleton, Hathersage, reading this report and listening to the comments made, might think that perhaps we're living on a different planet. We've had discussions on housing sites and affordable housing in Hathersage for more than 12 years now. The same sites, the same discussions. And residents have heard the council and myself talk about housing being our top priority. But over those 12 plus years, absolutely nothing has happened. There were 20 working families in desperate need of affordable housing in 2015. Another 20 in 2020, another 20 in 2026. They don't sit waiting for the outcome of endless discussions. They up sticks and move. And I have to say the communities are rapidly losing faith in the council. That's not to negate the hard work by the team, it's a statement of fact. So we have to do better. That's my message. We have to do better. We have to do even better. Take Eam, we've now had 2 housing needs surveys in 5 years. We've got a virtually unused council car park. Again, endless discussions, no outcome. Yes, we've got a public toilet in the middle of the car park, a public toilet this council owns. We could have taken a decision 5 years ago to move that public toilet, get it out of the way and have a housing development on that site. But we haven't. We have to ask ourselves why. We've got a parish council willing to consider a land swap with its own car park as a housing site in return for some modest support for a new sports pavilion. But it's too complicated. In Stony Middleton, we've got a formal quarry in the middle of the village, ideal for development. The owners, chats with the state, say, sorry, we want to keep it in case we need it to use for our own biodiversity net gain credits. And what sort of answer is that? I think sometimes I ask the question whether we're Mr. Nice Guy in discussions and negotiations. We are the housing authority, and we've got responsibility for ensuring an adequate supply of affordable housing. If sites are the issue, we need to make sure we bring everything to bear in our toolbox. Money. Think £500,000 we're prepared to spend on a traveller site. Powers of compulsory purchase. Relatively straightforward under the Housing Act. Nothing like as complicated as under the Planning Act. And if our housing team need additional support from Homes England or from the private sector, from people skilled at negotiating in difficult circumstances, don't let's be proud, bring them in. The second issue I want to focus on is the call in the report for getting on for £1.5 million of council funding to prop up schemes. The Peak Park is the only national park authority in the country which refuses to allow a small amount of market housing to cross-subsidise affordable housing development, thus meaning the need for Derbyshire District Council funding virtually disappears. This is despite the Park Authority's own research telling them that affordable schemes are not viable without a subsidy, and despite almost every community I speak to saying that they would really welcome some market housing alongside the affordable units because they help to revitalise the village, ensure the schools are sustainable and keep our shops and pubs open. If you want an example, look at Bradwell and listen to Councillor Andy Nash. Now, I know our officers say it's Peak Park policy and we aren't in a position to go against that. But I think, colleagues, as members, we as a council can make it clear to the Peak Park that their approach is simply unacceptable and we want them to change, not sometime in the future, but now. Not only is it costing the council and our residents hundreds of thousands of pounds and potentially jeopardising the affordable housing programme, it's threatening the very future of our Peak Park villages as successful and sustainable communities. So, colleagues, let's welcome our successes. I don't want to be churlish. Let's welcome those successes, but acknowledge there are still difficulties and we must work even harder. So we know it's hard, but let's rise together and meet the challenge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that contribution. Councillor Martin Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. Can I endorse members' thanks to Simon and his team for their excellent report. And I also have great sympathy for what Councillor O'Brien has just said. I'm probably, if I can refresh my memory, I'm probably familiar with some of the housing sites in his ward as well that I've been involved with in the past. But as far as Baslow is concerned, now I'm familiar with which site it is in Baslow. I'm very familiar with that. I was closely involved in the scheme above it many years ago. Right, yes. Yeah, I know exactly where it is. And that was a typical example where you have a large site that's probably allocated for housing, even by the Peak National Park, And of course, someone decides, well, we can't develop it all. We've got to retain some of it as open space because of the visual aspects of that part of a village like Baslow. So I can remember discussions and debates about that particular bit of land, whether it should be built on or left. But of course, developers who find that sort of issue tend to neglect, as we've seen so many times, neglect the site that has been refused for planning consent or I suppose it would deter the landowner from actually applying for planning consent. So yes, it was seen as open space at the time, and probably in spring and summer it probably looks quite attractive, but of course it's not been maintained really as even a biodiversity site, so it doesn't look too good in autumn and winter. And there have been complaints, I suspect, over the years. There were even 15 years ago complaints from residents about the appearance of it if it wasn't for housing. But it's funny how times change, and now obviously the planners at the Peak Park have changed their minds and decided that they can have housing on that site. So I look forward to seeing that development completed and thrive in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for an excellent report. I think what it did was clarify to me what actions have to be carried out to implement a housing programme, and there are the actions in the appendix against our corporate plan objectives are quite significant, and they demonstrate that we need to look at the market, we need to look at the planning system, we need to look at finance and all the variety of different things that have been brought up already. Peter, can I address you personally on this? Peter O'Brien. I'm glad you said you don't want to be churlish. You're not being churlish. I understand that there are things yet to be done. A lot of things need to be done. But I believe that the paper and the action programme from the corporate plan provides a framework for that to happen, so that the sorts of projects that you're talking about can be brought to fruition. So we're starting off with a few projects in different places, fitting into the framework that the paper describes, and I believe that it would be possible to bring further projects forward subsequently, providing that we get the appropriate level of finance. And EMCA can provide funding for brownfield sites. I think in the paper it suggests that we are actively talking to EMCA about that in the Peak Park. So I hope that those sorts of discussions will lead to further funding being made available to bring some of the brownfield sites that you're talking about to fruition as housing sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. I would like firstly to thank the officers for all the work they're doing, and the housing team. I think they've done a splendid job. But we are up against it, aren't we? Same as Peter O'Brien just mentioned, we are up against it by developers. In my ward, there was a gigantic scheme where we could have affordable housing, but the developer would not entertain one affordable housing, not one, and it was well over 200 dwellings could have been put on that site. We're up against that. I think the government's really got to take us a stronger hand, and by bringing legislation in to stop people sitting on this land. These big organisations think they can sit on this land and it'll get more and more and more wealthy, which it does, unfortunately. And they don't care about the people. They don't care about affordable housing. All they is maximise their profits. And we have to be tough with these people. And I think it's not up to us, but it's up to central government to really take this on board and really bring legislation in where they can't do this. And it takes a brave government to do it, but it'll have to be done eventually. So that I support everything we're doing here in the Dales. They've done really remarkably well, really. I just lost Simon one question. About 4 or 5 years ago, Simon, at Ward Close, there were some refugees came in at Ward Close at Wordsworth. Can you recall that? And they came in, and they did used to come to Welsh Springs Community Centre where they were learning English, you know, they suddenly disappeared. I don't know if they stopped using that area, them houses for refugees or not. Ward Close, Wordsworth. You probably look it up and send me information.
Maybe that's one for discussion afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So just to finally wrap it, I do agree with Peter O'Brien. We've got to do better on affordable housing. We're nowhere near where we should be. That's countrywide, not just us, countrywide. So the people with the land are holding on to it, and that's a big shock. That's a big challenge for us all. We've got to face that challenge sooner or later and take back control. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, just a quick comment. Peter, as a footnote to your comment about open market housing in the National Park, in my ward, the old Dairy Crest site was redeveloped and comprises 6 local needs and 20 open market. So they're not totally anti-open market.
Okay. And Councillor Flitter.
Again, it's just a comment, Chair, because I just want to go back to the positive and upbeat of this discussion before we get too bogged down with what we've not been able to achieve yet. We've still got 2 years to go, or just under. And this document doesn't mean to say that this is finished, this is stopping, everything is good. It's a continuation of this and a way forward to tackle those problems. And the problems that have been met over the past year have been outstanding. And that's because people have worked together in the local group, and our officers, the work that they've done. 12 months ago, we were sat here thinking, where is our housing policy going to go? We were losing an officer of great esteem through ill health, and we didn't see a way forward. Well, then Simon and his team came along, and it's been like an express train coming through the town, because the amount of work that's gone on is a credit. And this is one report of 2 tonight, of which I think it demonstrates the work that's gone on behind the scenes as well as within committee. I think it's a good starting point. It's a good policy. I'm thrilled that we've actually got something in print that we're going to work to, and it's across the Derbyshire Dales. I know that some people are a bit downbeat in certain areas, but the most of Derbyshire Dales are saying we are positive. We are working forward. This is the start to this tonight, and let's support this throughout.
Okay, good. If there's no other contributions, we should move to the vote. We've had a proposer and a seconder. Can I see all those in favour, please? That's unanimous again. Thank you. Okay. And thank you to the housing team. On to item 11 then, which is performance management. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. This report outlines the Council's performance against the corporate plan targets and the key performance indicators, known as KPIs, over the last year, 2025 to 26. Sections 1 and 2 set out the background to our performance reporting. And to summarise, 77 corporate plan projects were monitored during 25-26 after different projects were completed, added or cancelled over the last 2 years. Section 3 gives our corporate plan performance this year. Very positive. 15 projects, 19% were completed this year. 35 are on track or on track with some concerns to complete on time. And out of the 77 or the 58 live projects, excluding any projects that were cancelled, only 4 projects are off track at the end of the year. So overall very positive, a lot of great work done, and lots of things proceeding on track as they should. The key performance indicators, the KPIs, they show a similar positive picture. 44% were achieved with only 28% off target. We are still awaiting data for several KPIs, as the waste and recycling data, for example, is always provided in arrears. There's lots and lots of information on all these different things in Appendix 1 and Appendix 2. So I won't go through all of the details because that's all available for you to look at. I will note that in Section 4, we point out that 39 corporate plan projects have been completed in total over the first 2 years of this 4-year plan. That's an almost perfect 49.4% of the planned projects. So exactly on time. We're halfway through and half of the projects have been completed. So really pleased that that's where we should be. In this quarter alone, the Ashbourne Airfield Master Plan project has been completed, as has the public toilet review. So there is excellent work being done and completed all of the time. In Section 4, there are some more details of all the positive progress being made in the other projects. And the 4 off-track projects are also detailed with the mitigations that are proposed to get those back on track. Section 5 gives you some further detail on the KPIs that we've measured and some of the results achieved. And if you do want more information, in Appendix 2, it will also give you some graphs about trends over time, so you can compare our performance year on year and see how things are moving. And finally, in Section 6 and Appendix 3, there are highlights that there's still work to do. There are still projects to be delivered over the final 2 years of the plan, and these will continue to be managed and monitored, and those are picked out in Appendix 3 to show what we'll be focusing on in the 2 years to come. There are 4 recommendations to this report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have if you'd like to make them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Wilson.
Hi there. Great report. I'm just going to focus on it's positive. It might run all a bit, but I was going to pick up on the 4 ones that are sort of off track at the moment. How are those being tracked throughout the year, basically, to try and get them back on track again, as it were?
Yeah. So all projects are tracked quarterly. So every quarter, all service managers are asked to provide their updates. But we've introduced more stringent reporting for the projects that are off track, and managers are asked to detail exactly what they're doing to bring it back on track and what the timescales will be. Particularly if this is complicated, if there's any further resources that will be needed so that we can start to build momentum to make any changes or budgetary changes and so on that will be needed. So I think the comments are copied in verbatim in the report as to how people have said they will manage these off-track projects. But I do know that Debbie has been in contact with the service managers recently to see if there are any further updates for this meeting. So we ask very clearly to give a plan of what will be happening to bring it back on track.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, it'd be good to see that plan as well if that's possible. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Councillor O'Brien.
Yes. A question on one of the projects which Councillor Wilton was referring to. That's electric vehicle charging points, where we still have a desert in most of the Derbyshire Dales. Now, this project's been in the current corporate plan and the previous one with 0 progress today, and quite frankly, I think it's an embarrassment. So, could someone please explain what precisely is intended to happen in terms of action by this council over the next 12 months, and what options are available to the council to proactively deliver on our commitment?
Okay, that may be one for Debbie, I'm guessing.
Through you, Chair. As you're aware, Councillor O'Brien, the Levi project's been led by the County Council. So members of the working group received an update from members from progress that has been made. Noted that there has been quite a lot of changes in that project over the years. So Levi 1 was around lamp column base charges, and the County Council are awaiting an update from the Office for Zero Emissions so that they can go out and procure that. They're waiting for that as we speak. Levi Funding 2 was around a consortium. This has already been out to tender once, and one of the councils withdrew, so it's now having to go back out for reprocurement. So some of the issues that have been faced with the schemes are outside of the county's control, and certainly us as a district council. The third round of funding is for cross pavements, which the funding is coming via MCA. Now, I've been in touch with MCA and asked about the opportunities for that funding, and it is with MCA at the moment to accept that grant funding and to allocate that funding to the County Council. So we accept that although the projects maybe haven't come forward as quickly, the county obviously are hoping to progress all three of these within a short period of time.
Well, that's helpful. But my question is, what is this council actually going to do over the next 12 months, other than attend meetings with Derbyshire County Council?
Well, I think you've had a bit of an answer there, actually. It sounds like the ball is in the county's court, but our officers are pursuing them. I think from what I understand, there will be further updates shortly. Hope that's an accurate assessment. Yeah, if you wish.
So we do have EV charging in some of our car parks. So the District Council does already have EVs in 4 of our car parks. The ones in Bakewell are particularly well used. We are having discussions with National Grid around the future of EV chargers as well in some more of those. But there are infrastructure issues around connecting those. But we are working with National Grid and Community Energy as well that are keen to progress EVs as well.
That's good. Okay, there's a number of questions coming up here. So Councillor Butler, I think you were in first.
I was, but I'm going to step back. Well, my question was not on the point.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Whitehead.
Thanks, Chair. Unfortunately, Debbie, there's another question for you. It's sort of a little bit on to Councillor O'Brien's point. I also find it deeply embarrassing that we've put all of our eggs in the County Council's basket. It seemed like a mistake when we did it. It was a mistake when I brought it up last year. I was just interested then in your answer that you said one council withdrew. And I just wonder whether you could tell us a little bit about which council that was, why they withdrew, and did that mean they were then able to bring resource into their own council to then do the work themselves?
I'll try and answer what I can on the limited information that I have. So the consortium was included Staffordshire at the time, and they withdrew from that after the tender had already gone out. So it's meant that the county have had to amend that consortium bid to withdraw that area completely, which has caused some delays, obviously, because then they've had to go out and restart that procurement process. What that's done in terms of the funding and Staffordshire, I'm not able to answer that.
Okay. Councillor Upton.
Thank you, Chair. I think there are two, I guess, markets here, aren't there? There's the on-street market, if you like, that the County Council clearly is accountable for, and I'm guessing the view in the room is clearly not delivering enough at pace. And then I guess there's the car park market, which may or may not serve residents and visitors. I guess this current cost of living crisis, the cost of fuel, really is hammering home the impact of not having sufficient infrastructure, whether for residents or visitors or both. And whilst I reiterate the fact that it is clearly the County Council that has dropped the ball on this, I think Peter's point is, how do we use the power of our relationship with the county council to make sure that almost on a town by town or ward by ward or village by village basis, residents know what is going to happen, because I mean, the government is asking people to buy into EVs, the energy market is telling them buy EVs, and I'm guessing they're just putting off purchases. Or in fact, as a friend of mine who took their car for service last week, was given an EV, they're a petrol car driver, given an EV, because they are now being given out as hire vehicles and has no idea where to charge it. So we're getting to a critical point. And I say that I think the ask is, please, please, please bring the county council to the table and let's show the residents we've got a ward by ward view on this. Thank you.
So we are meeting the county quite regularly now and getting updates on where they are with all 3 of the schemes. I would highlight to anybody that has got an EV car, you please go on Zap Map, which is on our website, which tells you where all of the public charging is in the whole of the district. You'd be surprised at the numbers that are on there, as well as obviously the district council's EV chargers in our car parks. But yeah, as soon as we get an update, we'll share that. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you just repeat that? What's it called again on our website?
It's called Zap Map. If you pop it into the search on the Derbyshire Dales website, it comes up and it's all of the publicly available EV chargers.
Thank you for that. Councillor G.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is quite on track on this, but at a recent meeting, parish council meeting of Overhaddon, the parish council expressed an interest in whether there was an avenue for them to take over the car park or actually be given the asset of the car park so they could manage the toilets and the car park themselves. And that came across to myself, and I think, I'm not sure, I don't want to speak for Councillor Butcher, but it seemed to be quite an impressive offer. And I just wondered if there is a possibility of that type of activity, so it takes the stress off us, and given the fact that LGR is a possibility in the future, it's sort of the transfer of our assets to the parish council so they can take the benefit for the community in the future.
Okay. There's a question about where the funding would come from for EV charging for that, though, I guess. But Debbie, do you have any observations?
There are some opportunities for funding, and I know we've been approached by a church.
No, this is not really funding. It's about whether we can transfer the asset of the car park and the toilets to the parish council, so it takes it out of our hands.
The separate.
Point of order. This isn't to do with the paper that Claire so well described to us.
Well, it came up.
Can we continue with a discussion of Claire's paper rather than coming up with something which may be important to you,
No.
It's not important.
I'm sorry.
To
it
Claire.
came up with the actual management of the toilet scheme. We've got the toilet scheme, and that would be like a reversal. So you're giving away the.
Point of order. Point of order, please. I'm sorry.
We should let councillors finish their questions, please. Yes, you have. Thank you. All right. Okay. I think I saw another hand up. Was that a question or?
I had my hand up.
Councillor Hughes, over to you.
Claire, thank you for an excellent paper. I'm interested in, as Peter O'Brien and others are interested in, those projects that have not progressed. And I noticed that it's not only with car charging, it's also with solar panels and other projects that are to some extent beyond our control, that they're not progressing. Now this fits in with another email conversation I had today with Chris Dale about progressing planning applications and progressing the permissions subsequently, where the delay in those planning applications seems to arise from external bodies not responding or responding in an inappropriate way to the requirements. And I suggested to him, and I suggest to you, that we need to manage our external partners to improve their performance and call them out when they don't perform well. We did that with the local lead flood authority, and their performance has improved to some extent. Can we do that with the county council, people like Derwent, what are they called? Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, all the people who we are obligated to for their support in us progressing our plans.
Claire?
Yeah, so some of the off-track projects are, you're right, outside of our control. So please be assured that we are meeting relevant partners to try and progress them. It is, it is sometimes it's not an easy or a quick answer. So if we take, the solar farm, we're working with National Grid on impact assessments. They don't happen very quickly, but please be assured that the projects in there where we are reliant on others, we are progressing those and putting pressure on people.
Okay. Councillor Buttle.
I think maybe my question was a little bit more on point than I thought. I was wondering about, in 13.1 it said the climate change impact assessment is not required in this report because it's concerned with past events. But quite a lot of the time, the past events that we're dealing with have a fair bit of impact on our future. And certainly it applies to things like a solar farm, our drive for net zero as a council, our approach to car charging points, that kind of thing. So I'm wondering if maybe where we are looking at other organisations that are leaving us a little bit behind where we would like to be, whether or not we could put those kinds of things into the climate change and impact assessment implications, just so that we can, when people come to us and say, this is what you've not done, or we have done, and we haven't done, whatever, we've got an argument, we say, look, this report, this says this is where you've let us down, we'd like you to have a go at sorting that out.
I think you have a point, given that one of the appendices deals with items that are still to be achieved. So, yeah. Okay. And who else was it? Oh, Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some information which came to me about there would be a movement away from car parks to street lamppost charging. I don't know if that's true or not, because in my ward we've got very little on car parks. We just do ones on the marketplace, and that's about it. And I asked about another car park with more charging points, and it was put out, which it's true, Wirksworth is terribly short of parking. So is this a reason for probably not having so many on car parks?
So the Levi funded project 1 is to have more EV chargers on lampposts and columns for areas that particularly have problematic parking. So there is actually charge points in Wirksworth in the car park. In the marketplace, and they are actually quite well utilised as well. I think sometimes the problem with the car parks in trying to increase putting EVs on our car parks isn't about having the space, it's about having the connection to the grid to be able to put chargers on there. And that's the conversations that we're having with National Grid at the moment, because they're saying that sometimes it's not possible to connect EV chargers in some of our car parks. It's not part of their infrastructure plans currently, and if you want to do that, you have to go on a waiting list for future upgrades, which is a considerable amount of time away.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. Elephant in the room. In the last 12 months, there's been a major regime change at County, and as we know, they're not very keen on green projects and whatever, is that also having a major effect on, you know, what you're trying to achieve with county?
It's not the delays that have been caused on political delays. They're delays with withdrawing of some of our other partners. But actually, the procurement and things, everything is still progressing with the county council with those schemes. That hasn't changed through the change of administration there.
So we're already committed to these projects, so they can't really affect them. Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'm looking for a proposer. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move all 4 recommendations to this excellent report, noting its Q4 performance, not the final year, and that's not the whole year performance, is it? Or is it?
It depends on the particular project in some cases,
okay.
yeah. It's a little bit of a mixture of both to be reflective of each individual project.
Right, thank you. What a positive paper. It highlights, and I think this is the second paper that Councillor Flitter would highlight as being very positive tonight. It highlights officers' success in progressing the achievements of our corporate goals and vision of sustainable communities and a sustainable environment. I'm sure we'd all like to thank officers for their effort in doing that, and this is comprehensive right across the piece, because Claire's report is talking about all the functions of our council. Speaking personally, I bear some responsibility for 2 projects that are progressing but have some concerns. The local plan and Ashbourne Reborn. These 2 projects have demonstrated to me how important excellent project management and programme management is to the success of their success. Starting with Ashbourne, excellent programme management, I believe, has hidden a lot of paddling around under the surface. I would like to commend Giles Dan and formerly Laura Simpson, who went off to Derbyshire County Council earlier this or late last year, and in their work in managing the Ashbourne Reborn programme with no authority really over the partners, but taking a lot of responsibility for the distribution of funds and progress. And we have succeeded, I believe. The pavements are now wide enough that people can stand on the pavements in little groups and talk to one another. So you can gossip outside pubs. The market square looks fantastic, and we're hoping. We were talking to Councillor Lees last week. We'd like to see some benches. I think both of us would like to see more tables out on the marketplace and people eating out and drinking and enjoying themselves on the marketplace. There are some hiccups. There's a bit of abrasion on the road surface from heavy goods vehicles, and of course we all want Ashbourne to have a bypass. But overall, remarkable public realm success, and that's and also remarkable success in building the Link Centre, which is the Methodist Church, and the work that they have done is excellent. And they've just last weekend they had their first visitors to the hostel beneath the main halls in the centre. We've had a tour around it last week. It's an excellent set of function rooms for Ashbourne. So that's Ashbourne. So it may have a few niggles, but it's well on the way to being completed, and we're having an event on the 26th of June to celebrate that. The local plan. Now, the local plan had somewhat of a hiatus last year when nothing really happened, and but that ended in November when with the appointment of an external project manager. And the result has been a transformation, an extraordinary change of pace. Officers presented a 1,000-page agenda giving a detailed assessment of all the proposed sites and settlements to the May committee meeting of the local plan committee, giving us the opportunity of completing submission of a draft plan by July this year. That draft plan to council, that is, for approval or otherwise by July this year. And back in November, I think we were all a bit uncertain whether we would make that deadline, but now we're increasingly confident that we will. And so the excellent project management has been provided, and the fantastic work that our own in-house team has done in completing the assessments of sites and places puts us in a good position to achieve our deadline. So I think these two projects demonstrate between them what excellent project management and programme management can achieve, and I think that applies to the housing agenda item today as well, where the preparation of a framework for taking our housing programme forward will lead to, I'm sure, will lead to greater success in delivering affordable housing. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Butler.
Very happy to second. I've spent quite a few hours in the bowels of this report, and it's actually a lot better than it comes across, because you see the red, but there's so much green. It's actually, I'm quite comfortable with where we are and what we're doing. We seem to be on top of what we're dealing with, and we also seem to have methods, processes and what have you to actually tackle the things that aren't quite working. So yeah, happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to? Yes, Councillor.
There's been a lot of discussion this evening around EV charging and solar farms. Couldn't say anything because this wasn't a question, but as chair of the Biodiversity and Climate Change meeting, we've worked really well with Debbie since she's joined. The whole group has been re-energised, and we are very focused on EV charging and the potential of a solar farm, although, to be honest, that is slipping away due to the national grid connections. But what I really wanted to do was reassure councillors around the room that we do have an active biodiversity and climate change working group now, and hopefully, if I'm re-elected after next Thursday, then we will be focused on both these subjects, and I'm sure that if we're not, Councillor O'Brien will be reminding us quite loudly.
Okay, Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to put, again, a positive spin on this excellent report that's come for us tonight. And, you know, we've had some gripes about things not moving quickly, but this report shows you that we are on track. I don't think that throughout the life of this council that the officers have been presented with so many projects to get done in a corporate plan. We started off with 100 and we're on track 2 years later to complete that. Now, what may not have been done in the first 2 years is still on that programme of work to be done in years 3 and 4. And I've got no doubts at all. The one thing that I want to impress is that there's regular monitoring of projects that have concerns, because at the leaders and the CLT meetings that we have, we constantly talk to officers about why and the reasons that those concerns are held, and we try to deal with them one by one, and that's what we'll continue to do. But our officers have met the challenge here and they've come up to speed, and I think that we can only celebrate this, Chair. So I hope everybody will support this tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Chair, I think I want to take this opportunity to echo and expand a little bit on the comment from Councillor Hughes about the local plan. Yes, we've made fantastic progress over the past 5 or 6 months, but what I really want to say is what I do say to members of the local plan committee. So I would like all members to hear how well that committee works as a one council organisation. I pay tribute to members from all parties, from the opposition as well as the Progressive Alliance, it's really encouraging to see all members actively participating and providing their expertise and their knowledge and making the local plan so much better. So I think it's a real example of how, as a council, when we really want to, we can work collectively together. So I do want to take this opportunity to thank all members from all parties for their contribution to that particular project.
Okay.
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of with all the positive comments that are being made today about the corporate performance plan and the reporting on it. I thought I'd just make a little point about the leadership and the strategy and the management of the whole thing. So over the last couple of years, so it was a big project, a lot of projects to deliver, a big plan, and there were some things that weren't necessarily going as well as they might. And we did have a prioritisation process, which perhaps I should make some point about bringing out a bit more fully in this. But we identified really 3 top priorities, which were not necessarily going as well as they should. One was housing, and I have to say the leadership of the council have put forward a different team and a different way of doing things, and it's made a massive improvement. The second was the local plan and making sure we did that. Well, we now have consultants in on the local plan side, and as we're hearing, things are working really well. And the third was biodiversity and climate change, where we have refreshed the committee and got in more resource. So the councillors wanted these changes, and the officers responded and provided extra new directions or extra support. So I think it's the council is functioning really well. Yes, there are lots of other projects in the corporate plan, and the aim is to deliver all of them, except, of course, there was the extra work last year to identify those which perhaps weren't sufficiently priority to keep in the plan, and they were stopped at some point. So the remaining ones were all aiming to be delivered, and I think it's a fantastic achievement of the council to keep going at those, and we expect those to be done. But the 3 at the top I mentioned were both our top priority and probably the most difficult, and weren't really progressing terribly well. So I think there's been a major achievement in the way the council is run.
Thank you, Councillor Butcher, for that. I mean, I'd like to echo the fact that, yes, there is a lot of positive here. This is not a back-slapping exercise. There are some serious challenges here. If you look at a report like this, if I look at a report like this, sometimes things appear to be being done, but they're exercises and not necessarily delivery. And people obviously expect a lot from a council, but we are where we are. I could use all sorts of phrases here, the art of the possible being one of those. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned throughout all of this is the derailing impact of local government reorganisation, which does have the potential to take this council's eye off the ball, particularly in the last 20 to 24 months of its existence. So I think we will do well to keep on track, and we will rely on officers like Claire and Debbie to ensure that we do. But the public out there need to know that there'll be some things that are just beyond this council. It's a small council. It punches above its weight, I think, but we can only do what is possible. And with some of these things, we do rely on external partners, and MCA and the successor authority to this are obviously those ones that spring to mind. I think we're probably in a position to move to a vote on these 4 recommendations, aren't we? We've had a proposer and a seconder. Can we have a show of hands in favour, please? It looks like it's unanimous, I think. Yeah. Again, this is a bit of a sort of a record for this meeting, I think. 3 on the trot. So thank you very much, councillors. On to our next item then, which is item 12. This is policy for grant funding for the voluntary and community sector. Caroline, Director of Governance and Corporate Services, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks approval of the Corporate Grants Policy and Standard Grant Agreement template for use with voluntary and community organisations. Policy is required to address findings from the internal audit, which identified the absence of a corporate policy governing how grants are awarded and highlighted the lack of a formal agreement and documented outcomes. The report is does what it says. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, questions to Caroline? None. Okay. Is this a proposal? Thank you, Councillor Walton. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Wayne. We're entering into debate. Would you like to say anything about this?
I was just going to say it's a great report, and I think it's going to facilitate some of our work in the coming year and how we look at our budgets, and it gives good granular look, or give us the ability to have a good granular look at how we dish things out in the right way. Don't get me wrong, in the right way.
Councillor Wayne.
I echo Caroline's that it says what it is. So.
Thank you. Right, this is an uncontroversial report. It doesn't actually mention who's getting grants. It's just the process. All right. Can I see those in favour, please show? Again, unanimous. Thank you. On to our next item, which is agenda item 13 on page 237. This is the weight of your papers, I'm afraid. And this is the revisions to the Council's constitution. Caroline, again, this is, and Jason. Jason's taking this?
Thank you, Chair. I did try my best to reduce the weight of it, but probably not 100% successful. Basically, the report before you this evening is an amalgamation of comments from members and officers throughout the past civic year on where we could address improvements to the Constitution or amendments to the Constitution. And throughout the following receipt of those, we've compiled them together, taken them to a meeting of the Constitution Working Group. The Constitution Working Group has accepted some of the proposals. It has also rejected some of the proposals, and the ones that are before you are the ones that the Working Group is recommending that we take forward. So the first one on the list relates to the Council's decision-making structure, and the proposal is to remove Scrutiny Committee from the current structure. The report gives some of the reasons behind that. Chair, you've just recently referred to local government review, and there are some pressures on our resources arising from that at both an officer and a member level. So some of the resources that we've used this year to support the work of the Scrutiny Committee might not be available for us going forward. So the proposal here is that for this moment in time we remove it from the structure, but we do leave it open for a Scrutiny Committee to be convened in the future should the need arise. The second element relates to Article 7, which refers to area community forums. The proposal here is not to remove references to area community forums from the Constitution, but to reflect what has been the current practice in recent years, in that forums are organised and set up when there is a specific local need to do so, rather than having scheduled meetings throughout the year. The report does acknowledge that there are some plans afoot to look at other ways of engaging with members of the public other than area community forums, and any decision relating to Article 7 won't prevent that going forward. The next section relates to Part 3, which is our scheme of delegation, responsibility for functions. The first proposal is to review the delegations to the Derbyshire Building Control Partnership. This is just to bring some changes to the delegations to reflect best practice and to make sure that all the councils that form that partnership have a consistent scheme of delegation in place. The next one relates to officer delegations to Planning Committee. The main change there, they're set out on pages 70 to 78 of Part 3. The main change there is to change the calling period for major applications, so the member calling period will be extended to 35 days for major applications only, but for minor applications, ordinary applications, it would remain at the current level. There is a tweak to the to the delegations to committee, so that if there are unresolved objections but the officer recommendation is to refuse, then that would be delegated to officers and wouldn't have to go to a committee for refusal. The next section relates to the working group terms of reference. So the Constitution sets out a number of working groups, and before you are revisions to the terms of reference for the Climate Change and Biodiversity Working Group and the Housing Working Group. Both of these terms of reference have been to the relevant working groups and for approval prior to this meeting. Part 4 of the Council's Constitution relates to the rules of procedure. The first suggestion is that Part 4 is amended to change the rules relating to substitutions. Currently, in the Constitution, the number of substitutions per group for the larger groups is limited to the number of members that a group has on that committee. This proposal is that the groups will be able to nominate all members who are not nominated members of that committee as substitutes. So the papers that we've already circulated in anticipation of the annual meeting have been developed on that basis, but it does give the council more flexibility and able to maintain political balance at meetings. The next element relates to public participation. Councillors will be aware that in recent months we've had an increase in the number of people who have registered to speak under our public participation scheme but have not attended the meeting and submitted written submissions instead. The proposal here is just to clarify the arrangements that are in place for handling those cases when we have written representations rather than speaking. It also opens up the possibility of us allowing people to speak using Microsoft Teams. The equipment in this council chamber does facilitate that, so if we reflect that in the Constitution, we could take up that option, and we just clarify in the Constitution that any members of the public who wish to take up that option would do so at their own risk, so that we wouldn't be we wouldn't have to defer items at committee if there was a technical problem or anything like that. The third element relates to amendments to motions and recommendations. There are already existing provisions within the Constitution relating to what is a valid amendment. The proposal before you just tightens up the wording a bit, just to make sure that those definitions of a valid amendment apply to all amendments, whether it's to a notice of motion or whether it's to an officer recommendation that's been moved and seconded by councillors. The next element relates to electronic voting. So the equipment in front of you that we've invested in does allow us to have electronic voting at meetings of the council. What this proposal does is it adds it to the portfolio of voting options available to members. It doesn't require us to use electronic voting, but by having this in the Constitution, should we want to put a toe in the water, or any chairs of our committees want to put a toe in the water in terms of electronic voting, this would facilitate it. And the final element in part 3 relates to the broadcasting of council meetings. It was felt that there was a need for some clarity within the Constitution about what meetings we will record and live stream, and those meetings that will not be recorded and live streamed. Part 5 of the Constitution covers codes and protocols. The first one relates to the Officers' Code of Conduct, currently referred to as the Employee Code of Conduct. It is, you'll see from the track changes, it's quite a significant rewrite from the previous code, but it is rewritten to reflect best practice. You'll see I've made a note in the report that councillors at the working group sought clarification on the reason behind changing the word from employees to officers, and so the answer to that is that in some cases officers acting upon on behalf of the council might not necessarily be employees, but the code of conduct would apply to them when they're acting on behalf of the council. The next section are some changes to the protocol on member-officer relations, again to reflect best practice. The next section relates to the local planning protocol. This protocol governs to some extent the way that our planning committee operates. Earlier in the civic year, we had external training delivered, and it resulted in some discussions about the way that our planning committee carries out its business. One of the suggestions that arose from that is whether removing the requirement to have a motion on the table before starting a debate at planning committee would allow a freer discussion amongst members about some of the options available before formally moving a motion. It's and the view of the Constitution Working Group that was it was worth pursuing that. Just flag up that only applies to planning committee and not other policy committees or full council. Also, there is a suggestion that the procedure is amended slightly so that members of planning committee would have the opportunity to ask questions of public speakers after they've addressed the committee in their allotted time allocation. You'll see there that the working group also considered some other proposals about limiting the number of public speakers or the time allocated, but the view of the working group was that they would remain as they are. And then the final part of the amendments is part 6, which is the members' allowances scheme. We don't really, as a council, have much option but to introduce this change because the local government pension scheme elected members' pensions regulations 2026 will require us from the end of this month to allow all councillors to join the local government pension scheme if they wish to opt in. So the wording there in part 6 is just to bring that those regulations into effect. And that's all I have to say, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, for that swift run-through of a marathon document. There's a lot of detail in there. I know, Councillor Hughes, I think you had your hand up first for questions.
Thank you, Chair. It's about the community forums, and which was way back in somewhere near the beginning of your report. There are parish councils and town councils which represent communities at a very detailed level, and is there no reason why we can't work through them? I'm a bit puzzled because the same thing happens. Looks as if the local government reorganisation talks about neighbourhood committees, and we've already got parish councils, and they represent people, and they provide a forum. Could we not use them as the basis for being involved with residents in particular areas?
Chair, I think that is some of the logic behind this proposal here. So we refer to area community forums in the Constitution should the need arise. But I know from conversations with many members here this evening that you regularly attend your local parish meetings and engage with parish councils, and of course the council does engage with the town councils at an officer level as well. So that you're right, there are already alternative structures that are in place that we are using for that community engagement. And I think from some of the experience I've had with local government reorganisation, there are certainly more options for parish and town councils to take over their own destiny a bit more following local government reorganisation because of the sheer size of the new councils that are being formed.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien, did you have your hand up?
I did, Chair. Yes, I've got 3 quite technical questions, Jason, so I'll ask them one at a time. The change in ruling on debate at planning committee, how does that affect the requirement for the number of times members can speak?
Are you able to help us with that?
Well, I've got two answers to that really. I'm not sure that we stick to those time limits anyway, but I don't think it would have a significant impact, because as part of the normal process at planning committee is that members will come back with questions multiple times in order to seek clarification, and the idea behind this change in the order is so that those questions can be had, and some discussion about the merits of various options can be developed before we move to a formal motion. And then once a formal motion is on the table, then the normal rules of debate would apply.
Okay, that's helpful. The move to facilitate representations by teams, which I think is excellent. Will it extend to the council providing the means for residents to do that, to providing them with a link? Will the council be taking the initiative in facilitating that representation?
So yes, the plan is the equipment in here will allow members of the public to participate on our meetings remotely by Teams. The way I envisage it working is that we would have the usual notice period, so people who wish to take advantage of that option would still be required to give notice by the deadline specified in the Constitution, and then as a result we would provide them with a link or an invite to our meeting here in the council chamber. And the way that we would operate that is we would operate a lobby system, so that members of the public would wait in the lobby, the virtual lobby, until they're admitted into the meeting when it's their time to speak. And that's how I think it would work.
No, that is the right answer.
Yeah.
My third question is on the area community forums. Now, I'm unashamedly an advocate of area forums, which have now appeared to be reduced to an afterthought. But how is it intended? What is the process for an area community forum taking place under the revised Article 7? How would it happen?
Well, I think in some respects it would depend upon the subject matter under consideration. So I think the proposal is that if there is an issue that generates a significant interest in a particular area, then we could use the provisions within the articles to set up a community forum. But where that request might come from, it might come through you as councillors, and suggesting that there is an issue within your patch that needs that level of engagement with the community. It might come from officers if they're developing some proposals or policies where we think it might be useful to go out into the communities and engage on those. So I think it would very much depend on the item under consideration.
So if members wish to propose, where is then that discussed and agreed?
I think that would come from the council's political leadership.
That's not necessarily the right answer I was looking for. But that's
I think I got most of them right. Yeah.
Perhaps this is one that needs to be tested by members. Right. Any other questions? No. Okay. Well, thank you ever so much, and thanks for those questions. Do we have a proposer for this mammoth paper? Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose this. I was on the working group that met and discussed this, and I'm really very pleased with what's come forward, because I think it reflects the fact that our Constitution is a living document. It's not something that you just take and leave. We've adapted new technology. We're going to use Teams. We've got the kit, let's use it. We've got the voting system, why not use it? It also reflects on our experience and also borrowing from best practice elsewhere. We had the planning advisor pointing out a different way of how a planning committee could be run, and we thought from our experience that seemed like an excellent idea. I think to come to community forums, which have been mentioned, or is it 4R? Anyway, I think the experience was that nobody turned up, or those that did turn up were the professional moaners like me, and it didn't really actually achieve quite the objective, Freudian slip there, that was required. So I think it does reflect what's happened. It's an evolving of something, and I wholeheartedly recommend it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Whitehead, do you want to speak?
Just very happy to second, and I say I very much enjoyed Jason's presentation and responses to particularly Peter's questions.
Yes, they were fun, weren't they? Councillor G.
Yeah, I'd just like to, if possible, add an amendment to the Constitution, which is I'd like to bring the members' motions, back to the beginning of the meeting after public speaking, rather than putting them at the end, because I think really it's a disaster putting them at the end, because it's really taking that option away in reality, because at most council meetings, if you put a motion in and it's stuck at the end, any public have disappeared. The option, I mean, we're supposed to be, this new Progressive Alliance was supposed to be progressive in terms of transparency and openness, and I think the fact that members are no longer allowed to put motions at the beginning, so they're in the public face of the meeting, is entirely wrong. So I'd like to bring back how it was before, because I think when it was brought in to put them at the end, it was slightly under the table. I think it was done on December the 19th, when most of us were thinking about some other issue, and it wasn't really highlighted very clearly, and I think it was a mistake.
Okay. Well, we'd need a seconder for this, of course. Councillor O'Brien.
I'll second that. I think it was a retrograde step to change the order, to leave motions brought by members right to the end of the meeting. The reason members bring motions to meeting is normally to reflect an item of local community interest. It's not to further our own ambitions as individuals, it's to reflect the interests of our community, and I think that's what the council meeting is primarily there to do. It's to reflect, allow us to hear and consider and reflect on and debate issues which are important to our local communities, and those issues should be up front when we have our council meetings. I think to relegate them to the end of the meeting, I think devalues the importance that we as a council are placing on responding to our local communities. And if I sit alongside the decision to abandon area forums and to leave any discussion of issues that are important to our local communities right to the end of the meeting, I mean, what does that say to our communities about how much we value their participation? So I'd be more than happy to support that amendment.
Now I've got Councillor Susan Burfoot with her hand in the air. We have an active amendment here, so we should debate that first. I'm guessing you want to speak about something else, is that right? Okay, well you hang on to that for a minute. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder about council business generally, and as a person who's sat on a lot of committees, I'm never a fan of bringing almost ad hoc business into the forum where you've got an agendaed business. And one of the issues around notices of motion is that they are tabled very shortly before a council meeting quite often. And that if those notices of motion are at the beginning of an agenda, they can have significant time spent on them. I think I've voted against every meeting proceeding beyond 8:30, Chair, since I've been in council, and I'm not a big fan of extending business per se. Notices of motion, it is difficult. I do agree that they do need to come forward. They are part of the democratic process, but the council agenda, to myself, takes precedent, and the time that can be taken over notices of motion with questions, asks and debate can lengthen a council meeting quite significantly, even though that might not be the intention to do so. I understand that maybe the reason for them being moved to the end was to prevent that from happening so that council business could be concluded appropriately and timely. I just leave that there.
Thank you. I mean, I think that's a neat summary of why that decision was made at the time, certainly. Councillor Dobbs.
Talking to the amendment and indeed why I won't be supporting it, because it builds on what Councillor Bond is saying. This whole aspect of where do we put the motions is something that needs informed debate, and here we are required to doing it on the fly. I would suggest we've got a perfect mechanism. There's a Constitution Working Group. Let the Constitution Working Group discuss it, bringing it back to Council, we'll make a decision then, but not on the fly tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Anyone else want to contribute to this? Councillor Buffle.
I was always a little bit dubious about the way we pushed those discussions to the end, because it felt controlling. So I'm kind of minded to support Peter and Gareth, but I'd like it to remain within the purview of the chair to decide whether or not that option to put them at the beginning, we default to the beginning unless the chair decides to put it to the end. And then the chair can make a choice as to whether or not this particular issue is a burning issue locally or whether or not it's something that can be dealt with towards the end of the evening. No, that's not an amendment to an amendment. I'm just wondering about how we're going to bring this forward.
Thank you. And I wonder how that would work in practice, given that one of the reasons that's being suggested is to benefit the local community. If as chair, I don't know about these things, or anyone in my position doesn't know about these things until quite late on in the day, then it wouldn't necessarily benefit the community if we weren't able to decide quickly when that...
Can I just offer a point of information, Chair?
Yes.
In that, as we know, the 10 days clear notice working days is required of a notice of motion. So there's plenty of time for that to be discussed with yourself as Chair for you to take up the option which Councillor Butler has suggested.
Thank you. Councillor Wayne.
Yes, I'm minded to be supportive of the amendment, because at the end of the day I think it's really important that the people who, probably the 6 people who may be watching now, but it's important that we should have the openness and transparency. And I've always thought that pushing amendments to the end of the thing is just in the hope that they get dropped off at the far end. I'm sorry, but that is my view. And I think to put them at the front of the beginning of the agenda, I mean, most people, if they often are important local matters that come up as motions, and I just feel that we should really respect our communities and put them at the beginning, because not everybody wants to sit round and watch us for 2 to 2.5 hours and then all of a sudden an amendment come on, a motion come on. So I'm more minded to support it than go against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I'd have to caution for members that are thinking of supporting this amendment, because yes, I mean, Councillor Bond has put this perfectly, and the reason that it happened was because the amount of work that we had to do on council business just was not being done, or we were called back the following week to finish the work. That is an impossible situation. And noting coming up in front of us is LGR. that is going to get 10 times worse. And so there are other options on motions that can be considered and talked about. Let's get the priorities right. The people have elected us to run this council, and a lot of the motions really we can't do a lot about. We've had some motions that entail lobbying. There are other ways to do that. And if we want to change something, we do it in regular committee. So I'm urging people not to support this, and let's move on.
Okay, we've had we've still got contributors. Councillor Lees, first of all.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a very difficult one, this. I mean, I think quite a few of us have been in this position where we've wanted a motion and it's been put to the back. But equally, we've got officers that spent all day here, sat here in the evening for these agenda items to come up, and they've been shelved, and we've run out of time, and you know they've wasted a full night of the time. So I'm a bit on the fence at the moment, but I do agree with what's been said, and I think there's a system that we could bring in, so they go to the relevant parties first, and then get decided from there.
Okay. Councillor Boynton.
Thank you. Yeah, I know Councillor Lee's views, as just said, and I kind of do accept them. But I think to put the motions to the end is somewhat dismissive of them. And I don't think time should come into it. We're elected representatives here, and if it takes a little bit longer, I'm afraid it takes a little bit longer. We should all be prepared to sit here and deal with the business at hand.
Okay, thank you. I think everyone's had a chance to have a say, except for Councillor Butcher.
Thank you, Chair. I did want to support particularly what Peter Dobbs was saying, was that if we're going to make a change of this sort, then it really ought to go through the proper process where one can consider the pros and cons. For instance, I think there might be a scope for having a 10-minute slot, a tight slot at the beginning, where something urgent could be brought up, a local matter or something of that sort, but so it didn't disrupt the business of the council. Councillor Fliss is absolutely right. When this was happening at the beginning of meetings before, it did disrupt the main business of the council. When it happened, I remember the monitoring officer at the time said, well, actually the constitutional rules said it should be at the end. Somehow you've got to the position where it's being considered at the beginning. We ought to be putting it at the end. So she just corrected something that we were doing wrong. But nevertheless, we kind of had a discussion about it and whether we wanted one or the other. And her strong view was, in no other council are these taken at the beginning, that it just disrupts the proper running of the council. I know Councillor Battle doesn't like order, but I'm afraid most of us do like things to be done in a fairly orderly way, and we get through the business as we're supposed to. And I would say that at the very least we should consider it in the Constitution Working Group rather than in the full council. And personally, I would still probably vote against it, but maybe allow a short time at the beginning for urgent items.
Okay. Now, you've spoken once, but just briefly, Councillor Bond.
Just to say, Chair, I'm very happy to propose a recommendation that that this conversation takes place at the next priority of the Constitutional Working Group, okay, and that could be tagged into these recommendations. And I think that Councillor Dobbs would probably agree with that.
Absolutely. I'm not sure we can amend at this stage, but if that can be noted, yes. I think we're still in the amendment, but yes, absolutely.
Councillor G.
Yeah. Just come back to some of the comments because, you know, I have been a councillor since 2011, and on my previous council, motions were always at the beginning. I've never sat on a council where motions have been stuck at the end. And also, I've never been to a council meeting where the business hasn't been completed, as far as I can remember, because we actually get on and complete it. I've been in the council chambers till 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, and we finished the business. Removing motions towards the end is basically negating them. You're taking away the little bit of power that individual members have, you know, because you have controlling groups, you have organisation between officers and controlling groups, and even within those controlling groups there are members who wish to bring individual motions, and I think by putting them at the end, that is a retrograde step. I think I'd like to go to the vote, And just remember, you're voting for your own little bit of power to be able to bring something from your community to this council, let it be heard properly when it should be, rather than when I've had to sit at the end at 11 o'clock where all the public have gone, even some of the members have walked out of the room, and it's not on. I'm sorry.
Okay. Caroline, I think you wanted to make an observation, didn't you?
Just a point of clarification, Chair, if you don't mind, please. Can you confirm, members, that you're wishing to move the motions to before the reports and not at the beginning of the meeting? As you'll see on...
No, the motions would come after the public speaking like they did in the past. And, you know, I know it's been mentioned by Councillor Butcher that the previous monitoring officer said that it shouldn't have been like that. I'm not sure about that, because from the day I came to this council, the motions were at the beginning. Nobody said that they should be at the end. So it's, I'm not even sure if it's stated in the Constitution when the motion should be until we changed it on December the 19th, was it last year or the year before? Without really the council understanding that it was being done, because we probably didn't read it properly.
I think that's the clarification of what the members' intent is there, Caroline.
Go on, James.
Yeah, so the clarification was seeking. So at the moment, everything's labelled from A to Q, and the notice of motions is currently under paragraph N. I think the clarity we're seeking is currently questions on notice, so like the questions we've had this evening are at J. So I'm assuming the proposal is that notices of motion will come after those questions, is that?
Yeah, after the questions.
Yeah.
Pursuant questions, like it was before it was changed. It was always, if you go back to previous agendas, that's when motions were.
Right. So effectively what we're saying in this amendment is that we would move notice of motion from paragraph N to paragraph K, and then all the others would then move down a letter, a paragraph. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So are members happy that they understand what you are now voting on? This is a proposed...
Move a recorded vote, Chair.
Of course, yeah. This is a proposed amendment which moves the members' motions to after questions asked. We do need a seconder for a recorded vote, and I think we've got one in the form of Councillor Butcher. Sorry?
I shall second it.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So we've got a recorded vote on this. Could we kick off, please? Sorry, Sarah. Yeah.
Councillor Archer.
Against.
Councillor Bates.
Against.
Councillor Boynton.
For.
Councillor Bond.
Against.
Councillor Buckler. Not here. Councillor Bull.
Against.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
Against.
Councillor Sue Burfoot. Councillor Burton.
Against.
Councillor Butcher.
Against.
Councillor Buttle.
Abstain.
Councillor Chapman.
Against.
Councillor Dobbs.
Against.
Councillor Edwards Walker is not present. Councillor Flitter.
Against.
Councillor Franks.
Against.
Councillor Froggatt.
Against.
Councillor G.
For.
Councillor Grishrex is not here. Councillor Hobson is not here. Councillor Hughes.
Against.
Councillor Lees.
Against.
Councillor Linthwaite.
Against.
Councillor Maelstrom is not here. Councillor Murphy.
Against.
Councillor Nash.
Against.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Peacock.
Against.
Councillor Ripton.
Abstain.
Councillor Shelley.
Abstain.
Councillor Slack.
Against.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
Councillor Whitehead.
Against.
Councillor Wilton.
Against.
Okay. So I have 4 votes for, 22 votes against and 3 abstentions.
Okay, that's clearly lost. Councillor Dobbs, you had your hand raised. Is this a point of order?
It was just to clarify whether it would be appropriate to add to the motion as now stands, which is the recommendations 1 through 5, a recommendation 6, that the position of where a motion comes in council business be referred to the Constitution Working Group.
I think that's a very neat summary of the debate that we've just had and the feeling among members. Do we have a seconder? Yes, Councillor Lees. Yeah. Thank you.
Who was the seconder? Yeah, I was just going to say it was already been seconded.
Sorry, my apologies, Councillor Whitehead. Of course, it's your seconder. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so the mover and seconder have accepted that into the motion. We're back to the main motion now. I remember, Councillor Sue Burfoot, you had your hand up a long time ago.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to refer councillors to the agenda item, which I think it's on page 243, that talks about protocol at local planning committees. Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah.
Did I speak about that one?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. There are 2 things on the recommendations that I am particularly pleased about. The first one is the proposal to remove the requirement to have a motion on the table before we start the debate. If I could give you an example of how I was, shall I say, unhappy at the last planning committee, where I was the only councillor on that committee who was prepared to go along with officer recommendation on that particular planning item. The recommendation was for refusal. I came up, I put my hand up, obviously, and said that I wanted to go along. I wanted to go along with officer recommendation, and I couldn't find a seconder. There was no seconder. Now, having said all this, I am not. This is not a blame game. I was aggrieved because I couldn't give my reasons why I wanted to go along with officer recommendation, but because I could not get a seconder, that was the end of me, basically. So this new proposal rather pleases me. I'm also pleased that the group had a discussion about limiting the number of public speakers. It's always been my view, and I think the view of the chair, Councillor Burton, that planning committees are serious businesses. They are serious for the people who are putting planning applications in. They're serious for the people who make the who come along to either agree with the recommendation or object, and for them it might be the only time that they ever sit in this room. And I personally am not bothered how long the meeting takes, as long as we have a fair and decent discussion and we come up with our view. So I'm particularly pleased about that one. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make 2 points on the report. I've already said that I'm disappointed that the proposal to relegate area community forums to, as I said, an appendix to what we do as a council. To me, that's what a listening council should be about, engaging with the community. And I think the reasons we need to ask ourselves really why people didn't come to the previous area forums. I don't think we should look to say it's the fault of our residents. I think we should look at what we were actually. We should look at the format of the meetings. And I think that the hint in the report that we can replace active dialogue, personal dialogue with our communities with social media, I think that is such a retrograde step. I really find it difficult to believe that as a listening, engaging council outward thinking, outward looking council. We're now going to rely on social media as the way we make contact with our communities. I'm really disappointed with that recommendation. The other point I wanted to make is not actually part of the recommendations, but I was looking at the delegations to officers in relation to planning, and the reason I mention this is that over the past 12 or 24 months, I've had a number of representations to me about changes to planning obligations. Now, this is what's called Section 106 agreements, where a developer or an applicant is obliged to make various contributions of affordable housing or what have you, consequent on the granting of planning applications. And often that's involved where the planning committee has quite rightly agreed a policy that X number of affordable homes should be provided. Then lo and behold, the developer comes along subsequently and says, I want to amend that planning obligation, and we end up with no affordable homes. Now that decision is delegated entirely to officers at present. Where we have planning applications, we have a process where local members are informed of a planning application and have the opportunity to ask that it comes forward to committee for determination. When we get applications to vary planning obligations, as far as I know, local members are not informed of those at all. They know absolutely nothing about them, let alone have the opportunity to ask that they come forward to committee for consideration. So I think that is an aspect of the Constitution which I think this is not being unkind to officers. It's saying there are some issues to do with planning applications which are really at the core of what this council is about. And as I said, if we move to a position where we have a significant affordable housing contribution in any particular community, a decision to remove that entirely, leaving that to officers, I think that's not helpful as our role as a council. So, I'm not sure how to handle that, but I wanted to raise this because I think it's an important issue that we should reflect on. And if others agree with me, then you might think of a way that, as others have said, making policy decisions like this on the hoof is not something although I do it occasionally, it's not something I think we should do. But I'd be interested in the views of colleagues as to whether that's something which we should reconsider.
Very good point. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. On Councillor O'Brien's first point, I feel that reliant on social media, or the emphasis on social media, I should say, in the change on area community forums, was perhaps too much. And I'd refer back to the point I made earlier that there are parish councils and town councils, and Councillor O'Brien and I have been visiting them to talk to them about local plans, the local plan, and we've had a excellent turnout in some places and a good turnout in others. So it's very rare that we've just talked to the council. Generally, there has been an audience of residents as well, and I think that plays to the success of that method of delivering messages or hearing from local communities. The local parish councillors know their communities. They talk to people in their communities, and they're representing fewer people than we do even, and we don't represent that many people, but they do. The number that they represent are in the low hundreds, or even less. Therefore, they communicate with their residents. They can reinforce the message or advertise any forum any meeting that we might want to hold in those localities. So, my suggestion is that we, as well as talking about using social media, the Constitution talks about the role that parish and town councils can play in providing a forum where we can address. And I don't know if that needs an amendment, or again, this could go back to the Constitution Committee to discuss. I'm happy either way. Perhaps I could get advice about whether that needs an amendment or whether we just go back, we bring it up at the next Constitution Committee meeting.
Kerry, are you looking to comment? Just taking advice here for a second.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I mean, I think with all of these amendments to the Constitution, then it does need to be deliberated with, because we do have a constitutional working group. So I think that would be the best first step in any amendments apart from the ones that are before you tonight, so that they can be debated and discussed at that relevant point.
Thank you. Could we therefore note in the minutes of the meeting what suggestions have been raised in the meeting that would then go back to the Constitution Working Group for discussion?
Yes, it's very important. I think the 2 points that have been raised just now. Yes.
Thank you.
Right, through you, Chair. Yeah, if you just put them through to your representative through the PA forum, and then they can then send them through to the Constitution Working Group. They can get all captured there.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Lees.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, going back to the planning and the 106 situation, Councillor Slack alluded to it earlier on, actually. We did have a planning application in not too many months ago, which come up for the developer not wanting to sign the 106 agreement. And that came to planning committee and we did refuse it. So they do come to planning committee, which is an important thing to do, because it made all the difference. There was no affordable housing and nothing. So it's important that it stops with the planning, I think.
Okay. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. This is a mixture of comment and wishful thinking, because from an environmental situation, if we were allowed to participate with teams, think of the CO2 emissions we could reduce, and be expense to this council on paying mileage charges. So, yeah, it's not under our control. It worked well during COVID, but perhaps we ought to be looking at lobbying government to relinquish that strict enforcement and allow us to go to we've got the technology, why don't we use it to its full competence?
Okay. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as Councillor Heath said, about a year ago, a planning application we got with 106 and affordable housing, everything in place. It agreed, everything. Then suddenly the developer chucked it to one side and came back with no affordable housing, no 106 agreement. And the officers contacted us all, and we all agreed that we were against that, and we threw that out. So I think that was a good move, and I think there's a case for doing that more of this. Yeah, well, I'm not in favour of what Councillor Chapman said. I'm in favour of face-to-face meetings like we have today. I think we lost a lot in COVID time, which we are regaining back again. So thank you, Chair.
Good. We've had a good old discussion about this. I think we're now ready to move to the vote. Peter, do you want to?
If I may wind up, so I'm advocating the recommendations as listed, plus the one that we've discussed previously. I'd just like to pick up on Peter's point, because in fact exactly what you raised was raised at the Constitution Working Group. In other words, you're talking about VCONs, variation of conditions, and there was one for an S106 for an application which is very close to my heart, as it were. That was the one which went to public inquiry. And I'm looking at page 27 of the amended Constitution, and I see wording which allows for that. we can bring it. All we've got to do is call it in. It's what it says on page 27 of the amended Constitution. Jason can confirm this if necessary, but I don't read that all VCons are delegated to officers.
Okay.
I think as a point of
We've had
information,
reference.
Chair, I think if you read if you read that particular article, you will see that variations to Section 106 agreement, which are not variations to conditions, in fact, are delegated to officers.
We have agreed that these points are going to be taken back to the Constitution Working Group. I think we've had enough of this probably for tonight. We've had a proposer and a seconder. Can I see all those in favour of the amended Constitution? Thank you. Well, that's as a surprise. I thought we were actually going to have a divided vote on this occasion, but it's everyone in favour, unanimous, I believe. Oh, sorry. Oh, my apologies. Right, okay. Presumptuous of me. All those against? Well, and I think there were no abstentions. I didn't see any abstentions. Thank you, councillors. It's now 8:30. Can I beg your forgiveness to extend the meeting, please, for the final item on the agenda? No. Proposer, Councillor Burton, thank you, and seconder, Councillor Dobbs. Thank you. If we move swiftly to that then, please, which is item 14 on the agenda. Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As members are aware, the Council does have a legal responsibility to designate a monitoring officer for the Council. And as members are aware, our current monitoring officer is due to leave the Council within the next few days. In order to provide additional corporate support to our legal team, as Head of Paid Service, I have appointed Barbara Beardwell to come back to the Council for 2 days per week. Barbara clearly is experienced as a monitoring officer. However, I can't appoint the monitoring officer to that position, so this is the reason why this report has come to Council. So the recommendation is that Barbara Beardwell be appointed the Council's monitoring officer from the 1st of June 2026, whilst the period of recruitment is concluded. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any questions on this? Okay, so moving to proposing, are you, Councillor Slack? Yes, okay. Seconder? Yes, okay. All those in favour, please show. I think that's everyone this time. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, councillors. Very good discussion. Have a safe journey home.
That must be a record.